Hello, welcome to Tech Talk with Steve, episode 41, Installation to Implementation. My name is Steve Cowles, your host. I am the product manager with AEM Precision Cable Test, and I've got a very special guest with us today, Lisa Schwartz, AEM's own Director of Product Marketing. Welcome, Lisa. Good to have you on again.
Thanks for having me on your show, Steve.
So for those of you who don't know Lisa, I imagine most of you do. Those of you that don't, she's been in the industry almost as long as I have. She's not as old as I am, so maybe not quite as long. But we've both been in the test and measurement market the same amount of time. So, and Lisa's actually the one, she's my boss. So if I do anything bad, just call Lisa. And she's the one who kind of lured me into the AEM fold a few years back. And I'm glad she did. So today we're going to be talking, as the title suggests, installation to implementation. So we're going well beyond just certifying the cable anymore. There's a lot more that's required of technicians and contractors and integrators in the field beyond just installing the cable, testing it, and saying, here you go, Mr. Customer, your cable's good. There's a lot of callback issues. There's a lot of things you might want to do after all of the network gear is turned up. So Lisa's going to talk a lot about how you can do all that with one multifunction cable tester.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. In fact, at the Bixie show that we just got back from this past fall in Vegas, the TestPro, I have to put a little shameless plug in here, but we did win this great award for TestPro, specifically for installation to implementation, a multifunction testing marvel. And it is indeed. And one of the things that we, as we approached infrastructure testing for smart buildings, AEM, as you well know, Steve, took a look at how testing has evolved, just as network infrastructures have evolved, and what technicians, system integrators, how their needs are changing. And where TestPro is really unique is in this installation to implementation. The product is very multifunction in nature. We actually don't sell mains and moats. We sell a single test platform, and you tell it what you need it to be on a given day. So when we're thinking about that initial installation and certification phase, of course, folks are going to have one tester configured main and one is the remote, and you're going to do your TIL certification. As we think about certification with smart buildings, AEM really talks a lot about the need to include the additional parameters that are called out in the standard. Those are the things that add actually to the pass-fail results, things like DC resistance unbalance, TCL, ELTCL, to make sure that the cable can withstand and support higher speed PoE. It's got good noise immunity and things like that to support a variety of IoT applications. And we do all that in 6 seconds, by the way, your traditional certification measurements, plus all the additional measurements, and then even distance to fault for, what is it, Steve? Nearing crosstalk, shield, and return loss.
Correct. It's return loss. Yep. And then if there's a shield anomaly, so a lot of times the shield is really interesting. People that are doing shielded cabling, a lot of times you might have a shield that's been compromised or it's not fully connected at one end or the other. And that allows noise to get into the cable. It can cause some other issues as well. And you don't see it with a regular wire map because the regular wire map is showing continuity. So having that shield TDR capability is huge.
That's pretty critical. And then also having those other tests run.
Yes.
The TCL, the EL, TCL as part of the pass-fail.
And you mentioned 6 seconds too, and some people might think, oh well, it's not that big of a deal. My other tester can do my normal tests in 8 or 9 seconds, and it only takes 18 or 19 when I do that. But when you add that up over a large job, all those additional seconds, if it takes it 12, 13 seconds longer to run over 600, 800 drops, it starts to add up.
Yeah. I did actually have a customer, Steve, who uh, did a comparison themselves against a competitive tester and ours with everything turned on, although that competitive tester did not do distance to fault on Shield. And it came in at 19 seconds versus our 6.
Right.
So that does make a huge difference. Um, so, we think about that initial certification phase, that all contractors are familiar with. You certify the cable, you save that result, upload it to the included database. And typically, they're done, they turn over that report and they're out. But with smart buildings, a little bit different game. And there's two ways I think people should think about it. One, take advantage of all new things in smart buildings. There's ways that you can add new services to your offering with the breadth of capability that TestPro offers beyond just certifying the cable. So I'll talk about that in a second. But the other piece of it, and Steve, this is something that you kind of more so educated me on based on your conversations that you have with folks, and that is cable tested out good, got certified, they left the job. And now all these other vendors come in to deploy other things and stuff happens.
Oh yeah.
People.
I've had more than one customer have to go back because the end user called them up and said, "Hey, this link's not working." And you go back and find out, well, yeah, I hooked up my PoE test with my TestPro and I'm not getting the PoE, or my network connection speed isn't what it's supposed to be. And they start doing some research and using all those tools that you mentioned on the TestPro. Lo and behold, somebody damaged a cable in the cable tray. That maybe they put something else in there and they crushed it with a cable tie. They lashed their cable they pulled in after it with something else, or somewhere else in that, in the equipment room or the telecommunications room or the closet, whatever anybody's going to call it these days. Something happened and it was damaged, and you can pinpoint, as you mentioned, those TDR functionalities built in, the crosstalk, the return loss TDR, the Shield TDR. You can find all those things when damage has occurred, and it does occur, because it's not like all trades are in there at the same time and they finish and they all leave at the
Right.
same time and everything's working. It's got to be staggered because you can't have all those people in there at the same time.
Right, absolutely. And actually, Steve, there's a question that came in. I'm just going to go ahead and let's focus on answering it because we're literally talking about it right now. About distance to fault on a Shield, for short, on FTP cabling.
On a Shield fault, what the Shield TDR is going to show you is going to be changes in the Shield itself. It's going to be, say the Shield has been partially compromised. Maybe the sheath has been damaged and only part of the Shield is making contact. So it's giving you just a slight connection there. But on a basic wire map, that looks good because it's got
going to show connected.
It's got electrical continuity end to end. But what the Shield locator does is it will alert you on the wire map and show you there's an anomaly at X amount of meters or X amount of feet. And then when you drill into the TDR, it'll pinpoint exactly where that is. And you can see the spike on the graphical representation there.
Yeah, thanks for putting in the question, Rod. So kind of going along that thought process, Steve. So, okay, so now, I am the contractor. I get that phone call. I get called back. And a question that I always ask when I'm talking to a customer in this situation is I ask, what do you do to troubleshoot the problem? And the answer is always, I retest the cable. And then I ask, does that give you an answer? And it's typically, nope, still shows pass, but they're having a problem. So now what do I do? So I am going to actually pop over to our website to show some visuals to start to explain what we mean here by multifunction. So I'll also, it's a new website, so I'm going to show folks how to navigate a couple things, but aem-test.com is the site. You can get some quick visibility on some of the different solutions, but I'm going to pop over here to this little drop-down menu, and I am going to click on Smart Building Network Infrastructure. I could just click on these products, but I'm going to click here just to point you to this quick minute. And one of the things I want is you can watch a video that goes a little bit deeper on this topic of installation to implementation. This was an interview that was done with Patrick McLaughlin. He's the editor of CINM magazine. So definitely check that out, folks. But what I want to show you from a visual perspective here when we talk about how the heck am I going to treat this problem beyond testing the cable. And if you've seen our advertising, you've seen our trade show booths, things like that, our data sheets, our brochures, you see these little icons. And what we're conveying here is, yep, we can certify the cable, but now I've got to troubleshoot other problems. And the exact same piece of test equipment that I certify cable with, I can now do many other functions. When we think about smart buildings, power over Ethernet is a critical and fundamental technology. There are so many devices powered by power over Ethernet and more coming every day. It's really surprising. Everything from the obvious, access points, security cameras, lighting, but window coverings are connected to the network, sensors, big display monitors. If you think about call centers with big display monitors, many of those are now powered by PoE, all requiring different levels of PoE, lots of go wrong. So the exact same piece of test equipment I certify with, I can actually do PoE load testing. So essentially in this scenario, I want to see the network from the exact same point that a device where somebody's complaining, let's just say that Wi-Fi access is an example. I'm going to unplug the RJ45 from the back of the X point. I am going to plug it into the tester. So the tester is going to essentially now emulate the device on the network and negotiate with the PSE as though it was that device. So you're going to tell the tester what level of power that device needs. It's going to start negotiating with that device and come back and say, and I know this sounds silly, but it's going to come back and say, is it even a device that can provide PoE? And as simple as that sounds, sometimes when things are being set up for the first time and connected, it may have actually been plugged into a switch that cannot even provide PoE. It happens. So first of all, can the device even provide PoE? And then give some detail on what class, what pairs is it running over, and what is the allocated power? What is the power I should be able to achieve? And then where we're different in this regard with the same piece of test equipment is we can then hit a bolt and actually put load on the wire and measure the load. And really, this is the key piece of information. I need to know how much current wattage and voltage is at the jack where my device is going to deploy. If I need 30 watts and I see I'm getting 20 watts, it's not the cable. I can exonerate the cable as the problem. I can be the good guy and find the problem. It's a switchover provisioning problem. There's many different things it could be. But the bottom line is I identified the domain, I exonerated the cable, finger pointing stops, we fix it, we move on. And it can also represent a cost savings. Unfortunately, a lot of times the way people troubleshoot is to rip and replace. Must be a problem with the camera. Must be a problem with the access point. They just plug a new one in and lo and behold, there's still the problem. So being able to actually test that is critical. Also, again, same tester. Now I'm switching over to wired network connectivity. Am I on the right switch? What slot am I on? What port? Am I on the right VLAN? I can do that with the exact same tool. If I am in a mode where I am either a contractor looking to expand my services, you could expand your services to these post-deployment capabilities. If I'm a system integrator, and this is just part of what I do, you've got one test equipment that can take you from that certification into now, as I deploy devices, are they in the network and configured properly? That Wi-Fi access point I just installed, can I see it on the network? What is the SSID? What is the signal strength? As I roam the building, where are dead zones? I can do all of that with the exact same solution. One of the things too I wanted to touch on, Steve, because it's really a unique feature. So I want to highlight it. And, I mentioned at the beginning, we don't sell mains and remotes. We sell test platforms, and you tell them what you want them to be on a given day. So when I'm doing PoE load testing, am I talking to a remote or am I talking into the network? I don't need a remote. When I'm doing wired and wireless connectivity, high gig, for that unit that you were using as a remote, it can be turned into a main and independently deployed. So you essentially have these testers that can be independently deployed as wired and wireless network connectivity testers when you're doing that implementation phase. And when you need to certify, you bring them back together as a main and a remote. One of the things that really came out in customer visits that you and I were on earlier this year was, for many customers out there, they already have certification tools. But what they don't have in those tools is the ability to do all of the implementation phase.
Correct.
And really, TestPro, look at it as a complementary solution, not so much as a competitive solution, because it does so many other functions that a typical certifier can't do. It can be positioned for approval as a wired and wireless network connectivity tester. You can independently deploy them and use them as such. But those times when maybe your certifier's out on calibration or repair, or you have a really big job and you need an extra certifier, you can bring those units back together as a main and a remote, and you've got a backup certifier. So when we talk about it being, installation to implementation, multifunction, this is what we mean. And I didn't even get to fiber, Steve.
Yeah. No,
Maybe just fiber.
Yeah. So, you've got all that. You've talked about the copper and the PoE and the ability to split these units up. The main and the remote can become two mains. So your PoE, as you pointed out, your network test, your all that other testing, the multi-gig SNR testing, which is another one that's huge for smart buildings, so that you're sure that you have a good solid network connection at speeds up to 10 gig and that you don't have excessive SNR. And for those that don't know, that's signal to noise ratio. And it's, you've got a complete smart building test solution, not just for the certification of the physical media, including the fiber that you mentioned. And, for fiber, of course, we do, single mode and multi-mode optical loss testing, as well as the hybrid powered fiber DC resistance and voltage testing. And that's incorporated into the same optical loss test. So if you're deploying hybrid powered optical fiber for smart building applications where you need to provide not just the data over two strands of fiber, but you need to have a two conductor electrical under the same jacket as that fiber and provide power to a remote device or a PoE extender, for instance. Once you install that cable, you should be testing not just the optical fiber, but also looking at that copper pair to make sure it's still got integrity. And a resistance test will show you that. Likewise, once you hook up voltage, you can actually include the voltage to show that you've got voltage at that endpoint as well. But the key there is going to be that resistance test post installation. So it really does give you that full complement of test solutions for that smart building. And
Right.
and a lot of those tests too are incorporated. And I know we're mainly talking about TestPro, but we have our network service assistant, which is not a certifier. It's what we call qualification plus, because it uses a lot of the same parameters that we use for the copper certification, but it's doing it in a single-ended fashion. So it's not going to be considered certification, but it's pretty darn close. And it's used as a complement to certifiers as well, and can be used in those situations where maybe you don't need the certifier, you're using it for troubleshooting, maybe a different type of job where you're just going in and doing routine maintenance, that kind of thing. Or IT and network managers would use that product. But the additional tests that Lisa was talking about, the PoE and the multi-gig SNR and the network discovery, the switch port VLAN information, all that is also incorporated into that tester as well. So it's, whether we're looking at our certifier, the TestPro, or we're looking at that, another application and looking at the network service assistant, that's all incorporated in there. And Lisa, you were talking about a lot of these things, that the finger pointing, when something goes wrong on the job, and anybody that's been in this business long enough knows this, the first thing they always point at is the cable. Every single time. Oh, it's the cable. That cable installer did it. And they always get the blame. Pardon me.
Right.
And a lot of times it's not. You talked about some of the things, the provisioning of the switch. I've had situations where somebody, the end customer, bought a $100 12-port 90-watt switch online and didn't realize, for spending that kind of money, 12-port 90-watt switch means that you get 90 watts, but it's for the whole switch. It's aggregate. So you plug one device in, yeah, you're good. You plug another device in and another device in, all of a sudden you're splitting up all that power, and none of
Right.
your devices are working. Or
Right.
things like patch cords. So somebody replaces a patch cord, not thinking about it. They just grab any old cheap patch cord and plug it in between the PoE switch and the patch panel. And now all of a sudden you've got a bad patch cord that maybe has high resistance, and that causes problems with your PoE. So those are the kind of things, when you're using those tools, you can actually troubleshoot and isolate where the problem is, and eliminate that blame game you mentioned.
That are really critical. Steve, the other thing I want to touch on too, as we're kind of flipping back and forth between TestPro and Network Service Assistant, one of the things that I want to highlight about Network Service Assistant is, we call it a qualification plus tester. And I guess I want to put a little rumor to rest. I'll take this opportunity. So, again, at the Bixie show that we were recently at, I had several people come over and say, hey, I was just at one of your competitors and asking them about Network Service Assistant, and they were telling me your qualification plus, it's just all marketing. It's just, so it's not just all marketing. So I want to take this opportunity to highlight too what we mean by qualification plus, and what Certilite is, because I think oftentimes AEM is, we're very innovative in what we're doing, and people are so used to a specific model of what a tester is and what a tester does. Sometimes it's hard to understand how we've broken the mold, so to speak, and what we're doing that's different. So when we think about your typical validator or your typical qualifier, you're doing what? Wire map for the most part when we think about cable testing,
Yep. Distance default, maybe.
right? Maybe distance default on a pair, an open, short, something like that. That is not what Network Service Assistant is doing. Yeah, we do that piece. We do wire map, we do distance default, we do all that. However, it's also doing all of these other measurements from a single end. It's using a small little passive terminator which helps us keep costs down. So if you don't have to worry about cable manufacturer warranty, you are doing quick checks, you are a network owner, you want a little bit more than just, yep, I've got good wire map. You can actually run the Certolite test and it's performing the same measurements pretty much that you're doing when you certify a cable.
Yeah. Yeah. The
You're
only
just
ones we
doing it
really
from a
don't.
single in.
Yeah. The only thing you really don't get in the Certolite is the TCL stuff, but
Right.
everything else is there.
You get
Um,
DC resistance actually.
yep. Yep.
And
DC
then of course,
resistance. Yep.
yeah, all these other measurements. So an easy way that I remember it that I want to share with folks out there is if I have to support cable manufacturer warranty, then I'm going to want to use TestPro to certify my the work that I've done and to certify the deployment. But if I don't need to worry about those cable manufacturer warranties and I need more than just wire map, Network Service Assistant is a fantastic solution, um, especially if you're a smaller organization, budgets are tight, something to think about.
Yeah.
With both products, Network Service Assistant and Test Pro, you probably saw different adapters we had plugged in. They're both very multifunction. You're just hot swapping out different modules to get to, fiber optic versus certification. In the case of Test Pro, if I need to certify single pair Ethernet, I'm just going to hot swap out a module. If I'm doing industrial network environments, I can hot swap out to my M12 adapters. So it is the same piece of test equipment. We're just hot swapping out modules. We don't force you to have to purchase multiple pieces of test equipment to do the job of both certifying as well as ongoing, troubleshooting, moves, adds, and changes, that implementation phase.
Yep. Yep. And I'd also add with, when you're looking at whether or not you need a certifier versus our NSA qualification plus type tool, it does bridge that gap really between the common qualifiers and validators out there and a certifier because it does so much more than the other qualifiers out there. And
Right.
if you're looking at your scope of work, small job, large job, whatever it is, as Lisa mentioned, if it's got to be supported by a manufacturer's warranty, you're gonna have to do certification. If it's a decent sized job, you're probably going to have to do certification, and certainly for your own protection, you probably should consider that as a contractor.
Yeah.
Um, Smaller jobs and move ads changes, a lot of times you don't need certification, and it's going to be job dependent. And there's a lot of thought on this out there, and I see Chuck Bowser joined us, and he commented, helping the customer correctly identify the fault instead of finger pointing is critical, and that's perfect.
Right.
And Chuck and I've had these discussions and on when do you certify, when do you not. Bottom line is as protection for you as a contractor, you probably should consider certifying on just about every job. But there's some jobs that you may not need it, and there's some out there who will tell you, yes, you certify every single job, and
Yeah.
that's and in some cases, if the scope of work doesn't require it, then that's going to be the contractor themselves making that decision. Typically, on any kind of decent sized job, your scope of work is going to tell you that you either need to certify, and it'll show the standards, or it'll outline a different type of testing. Maybe maybe they just want basic wire map testing. God forbid anybody only wants that these days. There's so much else that can go wrong.
Right.
Even if it passes the wire map. I remember back in the day, we'd plug it in, and if it worked, we're good. We didn't need to do a wire map test if it worked when we plugged it in. But that was a long, long time ago. And,
Times have changed.
times have changed.
Networks are different.
They are. They
You
are.
know.
Um, and luckily now with the cabling infrastructure we've got now, when I first got into the industry, all these different networks required different cabling. So every different type of network, when you were going to change your network, you had to rip out all your cabling and pull new cabling in. These days, most of the networks that we're going to deploy, it's going to use that same twisted pair, unshielded or shielded twisted pair. And if you're installing, Cat 6A or Cat 8 or whatever it is you're using to future-proof your network, the applications can support that down the road, and you're able to go back in with a multifunction tester, and you can look at that cable and go, well, when I originally tested it, we were only looking at 1 gig. Now we want to figure out, can we run 10 gig over it, or 5 gig or 2.5? So you can go back in and retest with some of those other multifunction facets of the tester.
And there's a lot of folks who, do cable reuse. There's a lot of installed Cat 5 and Cat 6, but there's new things they want to do with it. So that's where that SNR, our multi-gigabit SNR test, really is a pretty critical test, because when we make that measurement, we are pushing traffic on the wire. If there's a PSC present, we're also asking for power load simultaneously. So we're stressing the cable to as much of a real world scenario as possible. And then we make a measurement at every pair and at every link speed that you request the tester to do at 2.5, 5, or 10 gig, and give you a measurement at each of those speeds with a cable that's been stressed.
Yeah.
You can see how much headroom you have to know if you need to replace, maybe re-terminate. But my goodness, testing this stuff can save you so much money down the road. And typically contractors get paid off those printed reports. And everybody's used to those printed reports for certification. But we also do printed reports for the network testing. We also do printed reports for that multi-gig PoE testing.
Yep.
So when I touched on, hey, folks, think about how to take advantage of these smart building network infrastructures and how you can add services that you can charge for. So, hey, Mr. Customer, I'm going to certify. I'm going to give you those reports. Once network infrastructure components are deployed, we come out and do phase 2, and we give you a printed report. That's the multi-gig and the PoE load testing. You can charge for that. It's the same piece of test equipment that you use for certifying. Talk about a quick ROI. Yeah, so perfect.
So there's there's your typical certification test.
Yep.
And then here's your multi-gig. Now this one I only ran up to 2.5 gig, but this has got your PoE and your multi-gig speed in here. Yep.
You by chance have a turtle? Okay.
And then you've got your test here for the network discovery, and then of course a fiber test. I did not put a Certolite test up, but to show people the difference, the Certolite test is going to look just like this certification test, but what you'll see is on this right side where you've got data for the remote, that will be blank because there is no remote. So you're not testing back from that direction, but you'll see all the main test parameters. It'll have all these same parameters. And then down here at the bottom, there won't be a TCL plot because it's not going to do TCL, but it's going to look just like this one.
Yeah, I always think that's a good comparison and understand Network Service Assistant is something different. It is doing qualification plus. We don't call it a certifier. We're not certifying bidirectionally, therefore it is not a certifier, but it is well beyond your typical qualification plus or your typical qualification tester.
Correct.
Which is why we call it qualification plus. So
exactly.
Let's see. So we'll look at some questions. I did want to note, I do of course have some year-end specials. I'm not going to go into the specials and all the good stuff we've got going right now. But if you visit our website, on the very top corner of the site, we've got a couple options. If you would like to get a one-on-one personal demo to talk about what back needs are and how the tester performs and what it looks like, you can book a demo. You can also contact us if you'd like some information about year-end specials. Also, we can get you a quote. I will tell you the specials we have running, we have POs in by December 23rd, so time's ticking. If you want to get in on some great deals, reach out to us. For those of you here in the US, I also see James Florio is on the call. He is our director of sales for the US. He can also help you with that as well. But out to us, we'll let you know what we can do to help you meet your testing needs and what we can do that's really specific to your situation as well.
And I did see somebody asked if we could kindly share the complete lecture on YouTube. And if you go to our website, like Lisa was
Here,
showing there, you
I'll
can
point back
actually,
to the website.
yeah, you can find these on demand. So you can get into our Tech Talk series, and then once you go in there, it will allow you to watch these on demand. It'll just ask you, I think, for an email address or something, and then you can go in and watch all
Hey, Chuck.
the episodes on demand. So, hey, there's Chuck Bowser and Chuck Wilson from the last
Yeah, there
episode.
he is. The
Yeah,
man, the myth. There
yeah.
he is. But some fantastic in here, very educational. Definitely check him out.
And we're always looking for new content. So if you have suggestions on something you'd like us to cover, please reach out. And if you'd like to be a guest, if you've got something that you want to share and you'd like to be a guest, we're always happy to have guests on. And yeah, we like to try and network with a lot of people in our industry. So we're always looking for somebody to come on board and share some new information with us. So did want to
Globally,
let everybody know that.
right?
What's that, Lisa?
I said globally. We've
Yeah.
got
Oh
customers
yeah.
and distribution channels all over the world. So
Yep. Absolutely. So one note, we're just about at the end here, but did want to let everybody know we are going to take a break from Tech Talk for the next couple episodes, and we're going to return on January 17th. So we're hoping that everybody has happy holidays while we're out,
happy holidays, everybody. Yeah.
and we will see you back here on January 17th. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Steve.
Thanks, Lisa. Bye now.